Today we're talking about cicada damage. If you've got cicadas in your area, hopefully you've already protected them with some netting. But if you haven't, we're going to look at what the damage looks like and what you should do about it. So we're talking cicadas. If you don't know what a cicada is, I got some here for you. They start out like this, and they come out of their little shells, and then they end up like this. And then those are all over the ground in your area, and they make the most loud noises that you'll ever imagine. In fact, at one point, I could hear them inside my house all day from outside. So cicadas, they do create havoc. This year was actually one of the worst, with the double brood emerging 2024, or Cicada-geddon as they were calling it. So yes, these create a lot of damage. So before we get started in deep dives into cicada damage, couple announcements. I did just release my ebook. You can go to my link tree and download it. It's all about container fruit trees. Lots of good free content in there. Check it out. It's called Portable Orchards. All right, so back to cicadas. So cicadas, there are actually two types of cicadas. One type of cicada is the periodical cicada, right? That is just once every 13 years or once every 17 years. And yes, they make a noise that sounds like a car alarm. Thank you there. Good comment. And it is so loud. Now, it's a different sound than the annual cicadas, which have come out every year. And honestly, you don't really have to worry about the annual cicadas so much as these periodic cicadas, because those are the ones that come out in force. And this year, with the double brood, we had lots happening. If you're in Illinois, I feel bad for you because you got the main brunt of the impact of that. So we're going to talk about what we did to protect them this year. We're going to unwrap this. Then we're going to talk about what happens if you didn't protect your trees. What should you do? And hopefully we won't get rained on too much because it is a bit drizzly here today. So first things first, let's look at what we did to protect against cicadas. Now, cicadas can damage tree limbs that are a pencil size or smaller. Okay, and that's important to know, because if you've got older trees, and it is starting to rain, so that's going to be fun. If you've got older trees, like really large trees, you don't have to worry about cicada damage as much. So anything over 4 years old or 5 years old, the damage that it's going to cause is not going to be significant. But if you've got young trees, then you're going to want to wrap them. And I did that this year for about a dozen or 15 trees, and it helped. I only got one limb damaged under one of the nettings where a cicada climbed up in it. So we're going to unwrap this, take a look real quick at what this tree looked like. Again, this is just some netting that I got off of Amazon, and I zip tied them to the bottom like that. Hopefully you netted your small young fruit trees. If you're in the north, you might still have time, but you might be a little late at this point. So we're going to take this off and see if we have any damage. You can see there's definitely been some bugs inside, just judging by some of the debris in here. Looks like we did catch a cicada, so that's good. One less. And yeah, tree looks pretty good, looks pretty healthy. I don't see any limbs, and the clear indicators of cicada damage is going to be a brown limb. So they would get in and they would cut this underside to implant their eggs, and then you'd see what's called flagging. Now, flagging is the term that's used for that dead branch, and you'll see that on a lot of oak trees and other deciduous trees. So just keep that in mind, that those are going to be flagged. All right, so this looks healthy. This is my pawpaw, and this is actually just flowered the last couple of years. Hasn't set fruit yet because my other pollinators haven't flowered, but it looks pretty healthy. So we're going to take a look at other cicada damage that occurred on my apple trees. So walk with me here as we get over to the apple trees. All right, what questions do you have about cicadas? I want to know what you think, what you've done to prevent them or not. They do come out every 13 to 17 years, the periodic ones, and I had hundreds, thousands of them. And so we got quite a bit of damage on these apple trees, and I'll show you what it looks like right here, because this is a good example. And you can see this flagging right here. So you can see this was damaged, and if you look underneath, you'll actually see some lines. You'll see like a line under the branch. I'll see if I can zoom in here in a second. But what you want to do is, anytime you've got dead branches from cicadas, especially on fruit trees, you don't want fruit forming on them, or if you've got fruit forming on them, it's just going to break off, and that's going to make a really unclean break. So what I recommend is taking your pruning shears and going through and making a nice clean thinning cut on those branches, because that's not going to grow very well anyway, and it's going to die off. And I'll show you what this looks like, and you can see that little slit there? This slit is the sign of cicadas, and what the female cicada does is it cuts this long slit along this branch, and then that slit is where they input 30 to 40 eggs. Yes, so they'll just cut, and then everything past that point just sort of turns brown, and eventually this whole thing will just fall to the ground. So I like to remove them just because it's going to give them a cleaner cut. So what questions do you have on cicadas? Of course, it started raining as soon as we started live today, so we'll try to go as long as we can without getting completely soaked. All right, so this apple tree really didn't do as bad as I thought. Now, there might be some damage that you'll see in terms of not only this brown flagging, but just some cuts that can be recovered from. And I want to find one spot that might have some damage that can be recovered from. And you'll know that it's not recoverable if it's brown past that point. And I did lose a couple limbs on my persimmons. I had it covered, but it came undone on one side, so that got removed quickly. All right, so prune up your cicada damage. Obviously, bugs are not all bad, right? We got to protect our pollinators, and we need to, they actually help aerate the soil. So I don't know if you knew that, but those holes that come up, that's one benefit of cicadas. But one draw is that if you do leave them to fall, they will go back in the ground and they will eat the roots. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, so that's what we're doing for cicada damage. Hopefully you protected yours this year. I did mine, especially on my young trees. Now, if you've got large oak trees like this one up here, you can see there's a lot of flagging going on. Obviously, that's not going to kill the tree. Trees that size are going to do just fine. And some of these apple trees are going to be just fine. These are pretty old, 6, 7, 8 years old. So I wouldn't worry about it as much, but I would go through and prune out any dead limbs. We're talking about cicada damage. I actually brought in this branch that I had that was damaged by cicadas. And you can see along here, this branch had gotten cut all the way up here, and it has gotten quite a bit of damage. So if you've got questions you're just jumping on, post them in the chat below. I'll do my best to answer them. We're talking about cicada damage. Obviously, this is off of one of my Asian persimmon trees that got opened up, the netting just a little bit. And so what I did is I actually did a thinning cut on this particular branch. And what that allowed it to do is that's going to not try to regrow partway down this branch. So that's what I'd recommend is if you've got these dead flag limbs on your fruit trees, I would remove them and I would dispose of them. Keep in mind, this is where the eggs are. So you might not want to just throw them on the ground if you don't want cicadas coming out of it, going back down into the ground in your root area. So what I would recommend is a couple weeks after you start to see this, what's called flagging, where it's hanging down like this dead branch, I would go in and I would prune these off. Now, if it's still green here, if it's green past this point, but you see some damage, it might heal up. And that's not a bad thing because some of them can heal up and recover just fine. So you obviously want to remove any dead branches, and that goes for any fruit tree pruning any time of the year. You want to remove dead, disease, and disoriented branches. That's always a good pruning technique. So what questions do you have on cicada damage? This was obviously a huge year. A couple things about cicadas I didn't mention before. They do go after deciduous trees, and they don't really go after evergreen trees. So just keep that in mind. Cicadas really favored certain types of trees. And I know that they were really into my apples, my mayhaws, my pears, but for the most part, they left some of the other types alone, like my plums, which I was surprised about. So what was your experience with cicadas this year? Post them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer any questions. Otherwise, thanks for joining. Just a quick announcement. I do have an ebook that I posted. It is in my profile. It's called Portable Orchards. So if you're looking to learn all about growing fruit in containers, it's an area that I'm very passionate about. And I've got an ebook with tons of value. Go there. It's free. You can download it. And yeah, so that's what I've got going on. All right. So last thing on cicadas. Obviously, cicadas cause a lot of damage. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to have cicadas kill your young tree. So do keep an eye out for any trees under 4 years old that have significant damage. And you might want to wait to prune some of those back just to see where that regrowth comes out of. And so you can do that by just waiting towards the end of the summer. You can do that by waiting all the way to the winter. Some people advise that. For me, I'm going to go through and I'm going to prune out all these dead branches for cicadas. So any last questions for cicadas? Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it today. Hopefully this was of value to you. It's going to be a number of years before we have more periodical cicadas coming in. But otherwise, I hope that you all have a great rest of your Sunday. And until next time, talk to you soon.